Politics. I'm Scott Stearns.
Hi, this is Paul Sickle.
Hey, Paul. How's your evening treating you?
Well, okay. I'm still a little incredulous.
Incredulous?
Toward the blue wave.
The blue wave.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. The pretty underwhelming turnout for the Democrats in Ohio tonight.
Primary. Lots of primary elections in 4 states tonight: Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, North Carolina. So I think lots to dive into there. There's probably some reason for some skepticism. Although West Virginia in particular, I think the results may be more promising than feared. So I think we can dive into some of those numbers. Otherwise, there's lots going on from obviously the New York Attorney General Schneiderman facing a lot of challenges. So he resigned, rightfully so. Again, another example of Democrats holding their people to a higher standard than Republicans.
But I mean the obvious standard as well.
You would hope so, but I mean these days,
So we have that. What else we got going on?
Iran,
right.
The fearless leader today.
And then they're stepping up in immigration, too. So I think we're starting to see Team Trump and, really start feeling their oats right now. And I guess that's how I would start this off.
If you look at the approval ratings,
they've been much better.
They're creeping up. The matrix on 538 shows them, I think, in the 41% range right now for approval ratings. Still over 50-some percent disapproval.
Yeah, but much more.
You don't like the trend. So.
Way now closer to what historical trends are. He's at 42% approval in 538 right now.
52%.
42, 52, which is not that uncommon with presidents at this point now in their career.
Right.
He's or not that far off anyway. I mean, Obama at this point was at 48.4. Trump's at 41.9.
But what was Obama's disapproval at the same point?
The net, Obama's disapproval was 44.9, and Trump's is 52.3.
So still, pretty wide difference. It's just, but you don't like where the trending is.
The net is Trump. Okay, fine. The net was Obama was plus 3.5, and Trump is negative 10.3.
Yeah.
According to 538. But Ronald Reagan was negative 2.8, Trump's 10.3. That's almost getting within the margin of error. Carter was negative 1.5 at this point. Ford was kind of a fill-in anyway.
Yeah.
Was also really close to this level. Harry Truman was close to this level. Was underwater at this point. Let's see here what Bill Clinton was at. No, Clinton was still positive.
Yeah, plus 15. And what year was that?
And that was 94. In 94. So,
and that's the year that the Gingrich Revolution hit.
Of course, it kept pushing the healthcare bill at the time.
Yeah,
and so they got all the negative press, whereas Team Trump has decided wisely to stop pushing the healthcare stuff.
Although they still tease it.
Well, and that's something that we ought to be. Every time they tease it, we ought to seize on it.
I think we
ought to say, hey, you know what? This idea is going to take 2 million people out of healthcare. Or Trump's cut down the enrollment period, and it costs 2 million people about, I think, 1.6 million people healthcare because of the shortened enrollment period.
I feel
lack of navigators, so on and so forth.
With the healthcare thing, I don't expect anything to happen with healthcare. I mean, not that they won't try, but the fact that Paul Ryan will no longer be the Speaker of the House, so he's a lame duck. I just think every time they kind of float this idea that, like, oh yeah, we're going to introduce a healthcare repeal bill, which
you know what? If they hold the House, I think they do it.
Well, if they hold the House, yeah, but I'm saying like this year leading up to the election, they're not going to do jack shit because they can't afford to do it because it's a political loser for them. But on top of that.
That's great, but
the reason why they are going to continue to tease it as if they're going to do anything this year is just they need to motivate their voters.
Okay, well, so politically, though, we ought to be taking that bait every time, rather than the Russia
Oh
bait,
yeah, no,
or the Stormy Daniels bait, or God knows what else.
We should take that at face value as if they're going to pass it next week.
Right,
For
absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, and it needs to be highlighted because the fact is they will pass it next year. And
if they hold Congress and the Senate,
right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a decent election, you'll continue to lose power or not hold power at the state level.
Yeah,
where they can either correct the problems created at the federal level, or they can make them even worse. And so that's something I would point out to folks is like if Trump care were to pass, but you got a Democratic governor in Wisconsin, or like let's just say like all the bad things he already has done, getting rid of the individual mandate, the shortened
enrollment periods,
and all that, the no navigators, trying to lead
the Medicaid funding, the matching funds go away.
That's
kind of
nothing that a Democratic governor with a Democratic legislature couldn't fix right now.
Mm-hmm. But once they repeal it, there are limited options for a Democratic governor, and then they get the fallout. Right. So let's assume Wisconsin gets a Democratic governor. They go ahead and repeal the healthcare legislation. Well, anybody that loses their health care, they're going to blame the governor, even though the governor may not have anything to do
I
with
would
it.
argue that that's true, although I would argue there would be a lot of things that the Democratic governor, especially if they have the legislature, which is probably a pipe dream considering my skepticism of the blue wave, but a Democratic governor and Democratic legislature, even with a repeal, could fix much of the many if not most of the problems associated with that, and we could once again become a national leader in healthcare. I mean, I don't want to become a national leader because every other state goes to shit, but I think my point is that winning at the state level is huge. The problem is you can't win at the state level really in a big way except through a wave. I mean, sure, you might pick up an odd governorship or two, but you know what? I don't think you beat Scott Walker without a decent wave. I mean, Walker is a power. He's almost a force in nature in Wisconsin. He is a force in nature in Wisconsin politics. Yeah. Like it or not. He's going to be tough to beat.
He will be. He will be.
He's beatable. You can't just have this, all this focus on... Again, we focus on Trump's personal life, or even, a scandal which they're just going to deny forever. And the thing is this: there was hope for a while that Republicans wouldn't stand for that. That's over. Mm-hmm. The Republicans have figured out if they want to survive in this environment, they got to be a Trump Republican. Well, because that's where their base is at.
And they're also becoming more desperate because obviously they've had a number of things go against them in terms of the special elections we've had to date. They know that they are at risk of losing some big
So
influence.
They're circling the wagons
now. Absolutely.
And which is a smart strategy.
I guess it's working for them so far.
It's also disgusting that it just engenders like a complete lack of courage. Like talk about profiles in discouragement. That's what it is. It's just the profiles in cowardice is what you're seeing.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
But this is how, obviously, in my opinion, authoritarian leaders take hold of power. They grasp power.
And principles go out the window.
Right. Because over time, everybody who initially hitched their wagon to that kind of, especially like, when we're talking in a developed country, a right-wing kind of ideology, they realize that that's where the gravity falls. Mm-hmm. And that's their only ticket to survival. And that, forget Americana, Now you got, McCain saying that he doesn't want Trump at his funeral, which I don't blame him for, but exactly. And I admire him for. But the fact of the matter is that McCain's not going to live much longer, number one. Number two, he's dead, but they seem that they're more than happy to have him not be in the Senate.
In the eyes of many activists on the right, he's yesterday's Republican Party. He's
absolutely
old news.
Absolutely.
Trump's the new face.
Not only is he yesterday's Republican Party, but they see him as dragging their party down.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
holding them back,
right?
With votes in the 11th hour, on the health care bill.
A true patriotic Republican would actually see him as having really fought a great fight throughout his life.
Profile in courage, you may say.
Yes, and not just because he's been sometimes amenable to Democrats. I mean, for the most part, McCain's voting record is pretty right.
Oh yeah,
pretty far right. I mean, he's very conservative.
If Ronald Reagan was a U.S. senator today, he'd probably be voting pretty much in line with how John McCain votes.
Yeah, he's a Reagan Republican, if they're for real.
Sure. Right. Yet these current Republicans try to dress themselves up as if they are Reagan-esque. It's all bullshit.
Or he was at least a George H.W. Bush Republican.
Yeah.
But he does have principles, but the majority of the Republican voters just really don't care. And
no, they value winning at all costs.
Well, the other thing is they whip themselves into, what I think is kind of an illogical kind of worldview of this under siege mentality, which we see in this art that we featured on our Facebook site. I hope you checked it out. McNaughton's Patriot art,
right?
But I mean, this is what we're up against. We're up against a culture of right-wing extremism, and
it's not only just right-wing extremism. It's just
idolatry almost.
There's that, but there's this idea.
Is too strong. I don't know.
There's this victimhood idea on the right.
Victimhood, right wing. Idolatry is too strong, but victimhood.
They feel like they are the persecuted ones.
Yeah, right.
As if they're being held down by some larger force when they're the ones
who are largely the person.
They're the ones in the pilot's chair. They're the ones driving things. I mean, Trump doesn't.
Yeah, if they don't like the direction, well, they should consult their GPS and figure out, or hey, not to be too conservative here, but break out an old-fashioned map and see where it takes you.
Well, yeah. So big decision today. So the president obviously pulled the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal.
He pulled it. Yeah,
he did.
I thought you said he pulled it. He took a poll and
no, not pulled it, but pulled it.
Right, because I think most people said in the polls said don't do that.
It's not a wise thing to do. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Now that's policy, and I think that this is something to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
This is an agreement that took decades to come up with.
Right.
It produced a substantial gain, if nothing else, a delay in Iran's move toward nuclear
like 10
power.
years. 10-year agreement that they could not enrich uranium and continue to further their nuclear program.
Mm-hmm.
It was backed by France, Germany, the UK, China, and Russia, and us.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's backing out. Iran is stating that it will remain.
He's not backing out; he's running out.
He's fleeing
to appease his base.
Well, of course, and of course he's going to play up like I said I would. I said this is what I would do, and then
also
I keep
to
my
appease
promises.
Reactionaries in Israel and
Benjamin Netanyahu couldn't.
Saudi Arabia
couldn't wait to.
Let's remember the Saudis win here because. You take Iran out of the oil picture, and what you do is you promote the price of Saudi oil.
Right. Well, there are two big players in that part of the world.
Actually, oil in general, though, not just because it's a global market.
Yeah.
Anybody in the oil business benefits from this because it drives up the price of oil because it takes a couple million barrels a day out of the supply chain. And that's a few percentage. I mean, the world, I think, uses something like 75 million barrels of oil a day.
Yeah.
And which is a lot of oil. That's why our carbon content is going so high. But we use something like 75 million barrels of oil a day worldwide. I think 2 or 3 million come from Iran. Now you're going to take a lot like that
from
largely off the market.
Mm-hmm.
Which, is really great for Saudi Arabia.
Who's going to make up the difference?
And you see this thing with Venezuela, too. like Venezuela, they're going after Venezuela hardcore right now.
Yeah.
Venezuela should benefit actually from taking that supply off the market, but I think they want to go after Venezuela to further choke the supply.
Sure.
So therefore, those that are supplying to the Western world are able to command a higher price.
Big players.
There's an argument to be made that maybe this is good environmentally.
Well,
but it's a fucked up way to go about your environmentalism.
Right, right.
Yeah, because you're driving up the price of oil.
Kind of ass backwards.
You drive up the price of oil, it's going to, move people back towards smaller cars again.
Yeah.
Which we've been moving away from. And so, but, it's more about, as far as I'm concerned, about appeasing Saudi Arabia, almost more than anything, and
right.
and which is so connected to global oil business.
But it's bigger than that. It's also about the fact that there are two big players in that part of the world, and it's Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they are competing interests. So Iran's influence was starting to increase as they kind of came back into the fold,
right?
In terms of the treaty with the West, and that's a direct threat to Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, Saudi Arabia enjoys hegemony,
yes.
and
they're no friend to democracy. I guess women can drive there again now. I think that's a new thing.
Well, I mean, not to get too conspiratorial, because I'm not trying to say this is a conspiracy, but. Where did 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers come out?
Yeah, we all know Saudi Arabia.
That isn't to say that we're trying to promote another 9/11, except we are certainly creating the conditions to empower that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my point is that if we were really concerned about terrorism, we would say to Saudi Arabia, hey, you know what? You ought to play by the same rules we want Iran to play by.
Right. Where are these Saudi Arabia sanctions to stem the tide of terrorism?
Right. I mean,
that's not going to happen.
And I think the Iranians. The other thing is, I think the Iranians would be justifiably frustrated to say, "Look, you're not sanctioning your bigger threats,
right?
Or at least putting pressure on them to clamp down on their bigger threats." Mm-hmm. I'm not to say that it's still a breeding ground for terrorism. I don't know if it is, but I'm just saying that's where Saudi Arabia is. I don't see how they're more our friend than Iran, other than they put 10 million barrels of oil on the market a day, and Iran puts 2 to 3 million.
I think there's an argument to be made that Iran is a much more progressive country than Saudi Arabia.
Right. Saudi Arabia
education and women's rights and all those things.
But the Saudis are more connected to ExxonMobil and BP. So it's good for BP, good for ExxonMobil, good for Saudi Arabia, not necessarily good for America.
No. So more to come on that. I think we'll see if Iran pulls out altogether. Right. As of tonight, they're stating that they'll stay, but there's nothing preventing them, obviously, from saying that the U.S. broke the deal and we're going to start
if
enriching
they're
uranium next week. So.
What I think they're attempting to do, which is also not a great thing for America, it might be good for Trump's policies, but what they're going to try to do is isolate us out of parts of the Western world and create new alliances.
Sure.
Which means that you're going to have our allies in old Europe, as the Bush administration used to say, right? No, but our current allies, right, are going to become more and more divided against us, and that's not going to help us economically, especially as we also have trade. I think this is a bigger deal than trade wars, but
it's huge.
We start setting ourselves in trade wars. I mean, basically, we're setting ourselves in a position of isolationism with a little bit of a handout to Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So that's by a handout, I mean a hand kind of pulling them into the loop here.
Right.
But it's that's a very tight loop, and not. It certainly isn't America leading the world in any sense.
No, it's the opposite.
Right. Well, right. America will follow, and maybe in the long run, That's good for the world.
It's just another. I guess you could say it's another. Just one more descriptor about how the American influence globally is receding.
Right, it's a weakening of America.
Yeah.
Now, there's a case to be made among progressive-minded people. That may not be a bad thing. However...
But what fills the void? Because something has to fill the void.
Maybe France and Iran and
China,
and Germany will do it together.
Maybe, or something worse.
You know, I mean,
we don't know. I'm just saying, pulling out of the Iran deal is not the way to do that.
If you're really a patriot, though, and you're interested in the American interest, I think there's a total scenario here where other parts of the world actually prosper and do well, and Americans largely suffer a little bit.
Yeah.
It isn't like a huge global disaster, but it puts the United States interests actually behind where they were. And I think there are people in the Obama administration and other administrations too, probably the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the Bush administration before that, that would also agree with this. This is actually putting American interests second.
Yep.
To immediate politics, and then a little bit of geopolitics with a couple of our tight allies.
Bottom line, this whole thing you can boil it down to one thing. Pulling out of the Iran deal was just about, it was one more way they could reverse Obama policy. If George W. Bush had negotiated the Iran deal, would it have been a campaign issue in the last election? No. It wouldn't have been at all. Yeah, they could have. Maybe they would have toyed around with sanctions.
He probably wouldn't have, because it would have pissed off his friends in the oil industry.
Of course.
Whereas Obama didn't have those ties, he was free to make a decision that was good for the American national security and the American economy.
Yeah.
Which might not be great for the American oil industry.
But I'm just saying that that's all this is. It's just like the healthcare thing, just like reversing, the consumer protections that were put in place. It's just one more way they can erase the Obama legacy. That's at the core of it. Yeah. That's what this is all about. That's just in a nutshell. That's what it is. So we spent a little more time talking about the Iran deal than I thought we would.
Me too.
Obviously, we have a lot of primaries, as we mentioned at the beginning, that are taking place tonight. Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, North Carolina. So just to run down kind of the slate of elections that were happening. So Richard Cordray defeated Dennis Kucinich in the Democratic primary for governor of Ohio. There was some speculation that Kucinich was kind of a dark horse, was kind of a threat to Cordray.
No, that didn't happen.
Did not happen. He lost by 40 points.
Right, and Cordray's somebody that I think most progressives would not shed a tear over having to support him.
No, not at all. Well, he served in the Obama administration again.
Yeah, but he was also the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He's actually, his mind is in the right place as far as I'm concerned. Elizabeth Warren supported him. Yep. Bernie's PAC supported Kucinich. However, Bernie himself withheld support.
Did not endorse.
Which I think says a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
Because Bernie jumps in, as we've seen in the first district here with Randy Bryce, when he wants to in a primary, when he thinks it's important.
So Cordray is going to face Mike DeWine, who is the Attorney General of Ohio, who was a former U.S. Senator a few years back.
Very conservative, especially socially.
Yeah, he would occasionally. He was senator when I worked out on the Hill, and he did occasionally buck the party, which I think is more reflective of the state that he's from.
Kind of like a Kasich Republican.
Yeah. Not party line to the extreme.
I don't think he'd be as good as Kasich.
Probably not. Still very conservative, but not always reliable.
Kasich only went moderate after he was chastened too, when he passed the anti-union bill, and then the unions.
Then the backlash happened.
Huge backlash, where they were able to use a referendum process where we didn't have one here, and we were stuck with the recall. So they used the referendum. Kasich's side lost the referendum, so they got all their rights back.
Yeah.
And then Kasich decided to become a moderate, especially on labor issues and like on healthcare issues. So.
Other races in Ohio, James Renacci will be the GOP nominee to face Senator Sherrod Brown, who is the incumbent Democrat. So that'll be an interesting one to follow as well.
So
Brown
I'm a little bothered
senator.
by the fact that the turnout in the Democratic primary appears to be about 679,000 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And and the Republican turnout was over 800,000.
Yeah, that's a little discouraging.
That's not indicative of a blue wave, considering we think of Ohio still as a swing state.
And my only counter to that would be maybe all the media hype about Kucinich being a real threat, because I think probably that was probably driving the turnout was the governor's race.
But shouldn't voters have bought into the media thing and turned out?
Maybe, but I don't know. I'm not there on the ground. I don't know what people are talking about. I mean, maybe Kucinich was the mayor of Cleveland and then was a congressman.
I have
from a
some
district
connections
in
in Ohio still, so I should probably investigate.
I just wonder how much outside of Cuyahoga County that people really took Kucinich.
Send me a text message this week, and I will call some of my friends in Columbus and kind of poll them and see what they're thinking. What's going on because it is so disappointing. If you look at the 2006 election, which was a similar Democratic wave on the order of actually probably on the small order of what we're all hoping for this year. Mm-hmm. The 2006 wave, 800,000 voted in the Democratic primary, 825,000 voted in the Republican primary, so it was still more.
Was it closer? Was the primary closer?
No, not at all.
Okay.
So the only thing that went on was that there was a Senate primary for Sherrod Brown, who was facing re-election.
Right.
Sherrod Brown was unopposed this time. However, Sherrod Brown won that thing going away too.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a big compelling thing. The bottom line is there was more Democratic turnout in 2006 than there was this year, whereas the Republican turnout actually increased over 2006. So it does not bode well if you think of Ohio as a bellwether.
Other elections, we got Indiana. Mike Brown will face Senator Joe Donnelly for the Senate seat.
And that's another one where the turnout was the wrong way.
Yeah, but I mean, Joe Donnelly was, he was not really opposed, so
right.
You wouldn't expect that there would be a huge Democratic.
No, there were some at the district level. So like District 2, which is the South Bend area, which should be a swing district, Republicans overwhelmingly had higher turnout.
You also had, on the Republican side, you had Greg Pence, brother of Mike Pence, our vice president.
Was he running for the District 2 seat?
It was the Indiana 6. So Mike Pence's old seat. So his brother's running to
he used to say Pence was damaged goods, though. So, I mean, I'm just saying, come on, let's be real. This wasn't good news here in Indiana or Ohio. Further down, though, on I-70 in West Virginia, I-70 just goes through West Virginia a little bit.
Patrick Morrissey will be the nominee on the Republican side to face Senator Joe Manchin. So the fear on the Republican side was that it was going to be Don Blankenship, who was this.
Right. I'm bummed that it wasn't in a way.
He was running against institutional Republicans.
Right.
He was running campaign commercials, calling Mitch McConnell Cocaine Mitch, and referring to his wife Elaine Chao as a China person, and all this
her dad was a China man.
Her dad,
so his father-in-law was.
But it's
either way,
fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me that he took that step. He took an inch to say well, I'm not going to call him a China man. I'm going to call him a China person. So still.
Oh, he did that. He said, that's nice. He was gender neutral. While being completely racist.
So in his mind, maybe he believes.
This is also the guy who ran the coal mine that blew up and killed people. He actually went to prison.
Just got out of prison. He's on parole. Right. And he got 21%.
Right. Anyway, he lost.
He did. So Republicans are breathing easier tonight. And
we're breathing a little tighter. We're a little more concerned.
Patrick Morrissey is he wasn't the worst case scenario. Evan Jenkins, who's a current congrusman from West Virginia, I think was considered to be the worst case scenario for Manchin supporters.
He's a carpetbagger, right?
Yes, he used to live in New Jersey.
Okay.
And he actually ran for office in New Jersey.
Was he in Congress in New Jersey?
No, he ran for office there.
So he couldn't win there, so he decided to move to West Virginia to sell his Republican politics.
So, I mean, he's definitely prone to the carpetbagger
So the best news
accusation.
The best news was West Virginia, which we consider a very right-wing state now.
Yeah.
The Democratic turnout
was higher.
Was much higher.
Yeah.
Than the no, 166,000 to 135,000.
Yeah.
So consider significantly higher.
Mm-hmm.
Much higher.
How would you expect? I mean, given the amount of attention the Blankenship versus Morrissey and Jenkins election.
Right,
and you would have expected that.
Not to put too fine of
Manchin would have gotten less
of a point on this, to get too technical, but I think on a per district basis, it was much better. There's 3 congressional districts, which is roughly in West Virginia. There's 16 in Ohio, which gives you a sense of proportionality. In Ohio, the average Democratic turnout was 42,437. In West Virginia, it was well over 50. It was about 55,000.
Okay.
So significantly a higher Democratic turnout across the state of West Virginia.
I mean, don't count Joe Manchin out. I mean, I know, obviously, those of us who are more progressive than Joe Manchin on a number of issues, I mean, I obviously criticize him periodically for the decisions he makes and how to vote, but he's a very savvy politician. He was former governor of that state. He knows that state well. And I think people underestimate his political prowess. And I think the numbers tonight, I think, bear that out.
Right. And so then, last but not least, North Carolina also had some really good turnout. The Democrats tended to turn out better in the competitive seats, anyway, in North Carolina. And one Republican incumbent did lose his job.
Representative Robert Pittinger is the first incumbent congressman defeated in a primary.
And the Democrat is expected to mount a pretty competitive race.
Yeah,
to begin with.
Mark Harris is the victor. I guess that was a rematch of 2016 where Robert Pittinger and Mark Harris faced off
in the primary.
In the primary, and Pittinger won by 100 some votes.
But Harris is pretty right wing.
Harris was the former president of the North Carolina Baptist Convention, so that if that's any indication.
We have a Mark Harris here in Wisconsin who's not right wing,
not
progressive. Anyway, that's interesting. So there's a lot to talk about here. We missed a few topics, but I think we should just move on.
I think we've got more to talk about. There's stuff going on here back in Wisconsin too around the tax credits that Walker is proposing or not proposing, but actually implementing. So I think that's
I think you'll see the governor race heat up a little bit here.
I think there's I think we're entering the high tide.
I'm hopeful that Senator Baldwin is looking better as the Republicans are starting to infight, and she's done obviously spent a lot of money on some, as they say, cheesy ads, but hopefully very effective.
Kevin Nicholson, I think, is not turning out to be the candidate I think people thought he would
he's
be.
not quite the dreamboat.
No. Leo Buchner is, I think, becoming the institutional candidate. But we'll be talking about that. And I
think Buchner's beatable too.
Yeah.
All right.
On that note, thanks, listeners. Episode 52 in the books. Forward.